Hello there. Hello there.
At last, where have you been?
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do?
This is where the fun begins.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Jedi Eternal.
Welcome,
the
everyone.
Star Wars podcast.
Welcome.
Episode 57. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew Bullen, alongside. He's left the nest. He's flown the coop. He's a bachelor on his own with a 70-inch TV, and it's Braxton Taylor.
You're really going all out with that, weren't you? My gosh. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, you really would take that
Yeah,
to
how's
the
it going?
extreme. Yeah, good. I was telling Andrew we had to restart because he said the wrong episode
Because I said
number.
episode 30 something.
Yeah. And I said, Andrew, you always sound so robotic. And then you really took it over the top.
Well,
So, yeah, good job.
I sound so robotic because I'm afraid I'm going to mess up. And I did mess up, which is funny, but so I'm like overthinking what I'm saying. And
That's
then,
pretty funny.
yeah. So anyways,
Yes.
I hope everyone is doing well. We have some things to talk about today.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a slower week in the Star Wars universe, but that's okay.
It happens.
There's still always something to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
A couple things before we get going into the news. Remember, you can always go check out our GoFundMe. Help us with our Jedi Eternal 2.0. Anything that goes to that is going towards us getting new video equipment and etc. to have some video stuff for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
There are Let's Plays in the works. Be looking out for those. Hopefully going to fit in maybe a VR playthrough either this weekend or early next week. Be looking for that as well. So let's just jump right in, though, into our first news story. And the first news story is talking about Star Wars Celebration. So they just today released an email to those that have bought tickets and have said that you're going to be able to reserve a room very soon. So here's how that's going to play out. Jedi Master VIP ticket holders will have access to the official room blocks on June 1st at 12 p.m. Pacific time. All other ticket holders will have access to official room blocks on June 3rd at 12 p.m. Pacific time. And then official room blocks will open to the general public. So those of you who have not gotten a ticket yet, but maybe you're hoping to, official room blocks will open to the general public on June 10th at 12 p.m. Pacific time.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I get they're trying to accommodate for people who already have tickets and stuff. It's just what's so scary for a lot of people like such as I who didn't already have tickets. It's kind of spooky. How many tickets are even going to be available? First of all, and then second of all, once you have a ticket, or if you have a ticket, whatever, how many rooms are going to be available? You know what I'm saying? So that's going to be interesting. So those of you who already have tickets, you're kind of sitting all right now.
Yeah, I find this very interesting. I'm very curious how they're going to do this, because you're right. Like, if you haven't got a ticket yet, why in the world would you reserve a room, right?
Right, exactly. Well, and that's saying, did they even mention when you can buy tickets, though, if you haven't gotten them yet?
No, I don't think so.
Exactly. So
not that I'm aware of.
That's kind of crazy.
And so, you have to imagine it can't be that many. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some, but like, I would assume a large portion of people probably also kept their ticket.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So yeah, it's interesting that this is going to happen so soon, and basically like you either you do it, or you have a really good chance of just having to like spend probably double the price later.
Yeah,
if you don't do it now, because getting hotel rooms are crazy for these kind of events if you don't do it through their reservations like right at the get-go, or you're going to be driving like a considerable length to every day back and forth.
Yeah, and that's one thing that it's always a big concern. I know, like for us, when we went, we had to drive a little bit to get there, and it
Yeah.
would have been really nice just to be right
Yeah.
next to the convention center and stuff like
Yeah,
that. You know?
and so I'll tell you what I reserved, for the prior one that didn't actually end up happening. I reserved a hotel through the reservations that was linked to the conference building. So like I would just be able to walk back and forth.
Yeah.
And
That'd be really
and so I plan to attempt to do that again this year. So that's my goal.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens, but
Yeah. So I mean, anyway, if those of you who are potentially wanting to go, who already have tickets, hey, there's your dates. You're going to have that coming up very soon. Those of you who want to go but don't have tickets yet, let's just all hope then. Fingers crossed that we can get something.
yeah. Yeah, so
All
good
right.
luck to you all.
Yeah. All right, so next news piece is actually something very interesting. This is kind of one of the bigger things that at least I wanted to talk about this week. And I had seen some of this kind of floating around. I didn't know if it was for sure, if it was real, but we confirmed that it was, and that is Dave Filoni becomes Star Wars executive creative director. And that was listed under his name on the Star Wars website as of yesterday or the day before that. I can't even remember.
Yeah, it was very recently, and people caught it on the internet, and of course, Twitter blew up about it, right? People were going crazy,
Yeah.
because as we've talked on here before, this is kind of what the fans have been wanting.
Oh yeah.
We've been kind of shouting from the rooftops, let's get Dave Filoni in and making some of these more creative decisions. Here's the thing, though, and this is what's kind of funny about the whole deal, is Lucasfilm then kind of replies in a shocked manner, whoa, they're like, why are you guys all freaking out about this? Come to find out, he's been in this position for a year now.
Yeah.
He started this position, I think it was last summer. But they never really talked about it. But to them, it was old news. And so they were almost shocked. It's almost like they forgot to really ever announce this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then they just expected everybody would know.
Which is odd, because it's kind of we have this weird hotbed of hostility within the fans. And it's they're getting the exact thing that they want, that most fans want and stuff. But I don't know, it just makes me feel like Star Wars, okay, fine, we're gonna have him be this creative director, but we're not really gonna put it out there.
Well, and I think this is an example of Star Wars sometimes not understanding its audience very well.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that if you kept your ear close to the ground, you would know that fans have been wanting this really bad, and you'd make a big deal about the fact that Dave Filoni got in that position.
Oh, and that would really start rallying some support to the brand as a whole.
Right. But instead, you did it pretty much with no fanfare, and now a year later, we're just now finding out because you updated your website. That's the only reason, not because you actually announced it.
Yeah.
And so. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And I think it just goes to show that there's this disconnect between the hierarchy and Lucasfilm and then the fans. There's some disconnect there,
I mean, regardless, and I agree with that for sure. But regardless of their disconnect or not, now that we have Filoni, and we know for a fact that officially he is, and he's coming up, I guess, on his first year as the executive creative director, that just gives me some hope. Hey, I'm sure we got some good stuff coming. So
absolutely, that's looking at this as, I think we talked about this not that long ago. I think it was maybe right towards after the Mandalorian had ended, and we were saying that hey, let's whether Kathy Kay stays or not, if you can keep her as the business side of things,
exactly.
But let's get somebody making the creative decisions.
Exactly.
And now this is what this kind of, to me, is. Kathy is there. There's rumors she's going to leave, rumors she's going to stay, whatever, either way. But there's going to be somebody making those big business decisions. But you have someone like Dave Filoni that is making sure that these are the stories that we want to, here's the stories we want to tell. Here's the direction we want these stories to go. I think this is for the best for Star Wars. I think this is a win for us as fans.
Yeah.
And I think now that he's been in this for a year, that first year is a lot of probably kind of sorting your way through it, trying to figure out the way it's going to work. There's a
Also
lot of
working on
ironing
the
out.
plans,
right?
too,
Working out plans. I think now that he's a year in, this next year or next 2 years is going to be starting to see this plan coming to fruition and seeing like what it's going to look like.
Yeah,
and
I completely agree.
And I think that's of course going to start with the book of Boba Fett. I think we're going to start to see what this event series this, I can't remember what they called it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, though.
The event series, I think it was. Yeah.
See what all this leads up to. And,
exactly.
And I think this is a big part of his first big creative decision. So
yeah, and I'm really excited to see that come to fruition because I have a lot of trust and faith in him. He's done really well in the past, and if nothing else, he's a big Star Wars fan. So I think ultimately he's going to try to be making the best decisions he can for the franchise. So
yeah, definitely. Okay, so moving on. Now this is kind of came out of the same story. Because somebody who was interviewing with Variety, I can't remember exactly who it was, but talking about Dave Filoni and the fact that Dave Filoni's been in this for like a year, and casually in this article, Variety is talking about the different series that are coming, and just casually puts in there that Rangers of the New Republic is no longer an active production.
That's so crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that? What's your take?
There is a lot to say about that. I want to choose my words carefully because I don't want to be divisive in any way. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say this because this is a rumor we're going to have. It would have been my rumor anyway. So I'm just going to bring this in here because it ties into it. So one of the rumors that we have is that Gina Carano reportedly is coming back to Star Wars. So that is the rumor part. And I want to just say right off the bat that rumor is most likely not true if this news piece is correct, that Rangers of the New Republic is no longer in production. So my point in all of that is that, from my understanding, Gina Carano's character, which is Cara Dune, in my mind at least, would have been a very, very, very integral part of Rangers of the Republic. Now, I've said this in previous episodes, like maybe more than 2 or 3 times even, and I mentioned how do I say this? I mentioned how if you're going to have something completely new, you're going to have something that ties back into it. Well, who's a character that has become a Ranger of the New Republic that we've become familiar with for 2 seasons now is Cara Dune. So now, though, that Gina Carano has been kicked out of the picture, it would make sense unless they just randomly substituted a new character, which we thought was Harrison Dula for a little bit.
That was rumored, yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense that, hey, if this huge integral part of the storytelling matrix of the show is gone, then should we even do the show anymore? And so, referring back to the rumor is that Gina Carano is reportedly coming back to Star Wars, and I just don't see that as happening for 2 reasons. Of course, once Disney thinks that you did something bad or taboo, then they're not gonna have you back. And secondarily, if the news of the new Rangers of the New Republic is being no longer production, then that just kind of confirms it even more that rumor is probably not true.
Let's there could be a little hope. Let's not forget James Gunn is coming back to direct what's that called? Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, well,
and so
there's something I can say there. I'm not going to. I'm going to refrain. But anyway, so I suppose it is possible that just because you got kind of annexed because of something you said doesn't mean you can't come back. I'll leave it at that to be safe.
Yeah, I think when you look at the series, first of all, they said no longer in active development. Mm-hmm. Doesn't necessarily mean the series may not eventually come at some point.
Sure.
But you have to think about the way they were planning this, as I assume kind of these series were going to follow one after another and then lead into the big finale.
Right.
And so if this gets put on hold and they go on with this, why would you go back.
Exactly.
So to me, if this truly is no longer an active development, then I would say chances are we never see this.
Yeah, what's the
right?
point of bringing it back? Exactly.
So, yeah, my take is this is definitely happening because of Gina Carano no longer being. That's my take. And just like you said, we saw them build up this character. We saw her basically join the New Republic. It was all leading into this series.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so the fact that she's gone, it probably just kind of threw too many issues into where they were headed with it, and they just figured, let's just cut it.
Yeah.
And move on. And I mean, hey, if you're not going to have her in it, it's probably for the best.
Yeah, as much as I hate to admit it, I have to agree.
Now, if could they have made a way to make Hera work for it? Yeah, probably. But if they were feeling like maybe it wasn't a natural fit, or it was going to be just too obvious, or I think that they're not necessarily making a bad choice here, though I am disappointed that we're not going to see this show.
Right. I agree.
So that being said, like, I don't know, will they replace this with something else? Will they just go an entirely new direction, but kind of still have another show to fill that potential space?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. But I think that we will find out sooner than later, because I think we got to be close to getting some more meat, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
like it's been a while now, but since we've really heard any. I mean, even the Book of Boba Fett, we have nothing about it yet, right?
Yeah.
And if it's to be believed, we're going to see it this year.
Yeah.
And here we are halfway through the year almost.
To be fair, though, we didn't get Mandalorian Season 2 trailer until
very true.
A week before.
But the difference is we had tons of rumors about The Mandalorian Season 2.
True.
Lots of stirrings. We talked about The Mandalorian and the castings and blah, blah, blah.
True.
We're not talking about the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hearing anything
We're
about
not hearing anything.
Yeah.
And so that is very intriguing to me that we're not. I mean, we're hearing more about Kenobi most of the time than we are an Andor.
Which
we are.
Bit of biased ears, I suppose, on the Kenobi part.
Well, yeah, but still, we're seeing a lot of rumors and news about Kenobi and Andor more so than Book of Boba Fett, and Book of Boba Fett is going to come before both of those.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
So it's all very interesting to me, and we'll just see. We'll have to just see how it plays out. But
yeah,
exciting
I guess so.
stuff.
Very exciting. All right. Well, that means.
So we'll jump into rumors. I guess we could talk a little bit more about the rumor of Gina Carano coming back. I don't know if you have anything you want to say about that necessarily.
Well, I kind of already said my piece on that. But, I mean, just to reiterate, in summary, basically saying that, would it be possible? Maybe. And I just highly doubt it myself because. Again, depending on what is said and what is done, if you're being annexed from Disney most of the time, other than James Gunn, you're probably not ever coming back. Secondarily, if Rangers of the New Republic is being ousted, I mean, there has to be a pretty significant reason for that. And as we said, I would imagine it's because she's not going to be there. Yeah.
Well, basically, the rumor is that her and Disney have come to an agreement to bring her back. I'm with you. I don't believe this for a second, really. I don't think that's going to be the case. So let's move on, shall we? I think we have one more rumor.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do you want to read it?
Oh, again, yeah. So the rumor is, I've been hearing this a little bit, and of course it is a wild one. But Brie Larson reportedly casted as Mara Jade. So... Of course, that is a left ball or a ball in left field, should I say? It's pretty crazy. Of course, that implies two things: that Brie Larson's coming to Disney, and second of all, that Mara Jade is coming back too. So it's a bit of a kind of a wild stretch there. What do you think about that, Drew?
Well, Brie Larson's already in Disney,
right? I meant Star Wars. That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
I always struggle with the concept of having your main big characters. So like I when Disney were to cast, like, for example, like let's say with Robert Downey Jr., if they had him as Iron Man in the MCU was one of their biggest characters, and then they were to add him in Star Wars as one of their biggest characters.
Yeah.
It's hard to look at Robert Downey Jr. as anything but Iron Man, right?
Sure, yeah.
And honestly, at this point, Brie Larson, I think, is famous enough already for being Captain Marvel.
Right.
And if you put her in the Star Wars universe as already a beloved character too, I just don't think it's going to work very well.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that same exact point, because I had like two layers of that answer, right? The first one is the most obvious answer, is what, like what you said, and I agree, is that, hey, depending on who she is, it doesn't matter. She is already a well-established character, and, you play a character enough, and you have a lot of other roles that are kind of inconsequential, you inhibit, I guess, the image of that character, and you become that character. So I guess my point is yeah, it's difficult to see someone who's very popular as one character come to another. But the other one, and this is something that I've said on the podcast before, is that I personally don't like famous people people who are already famous, already popular actors and actresses, reprising Star Wars roles. I just don't, because there's some episode out there, and then another 56 episodes ago, whatever it was, that I've said this before, but I just think that a lot of times when you, again, for the same reason, you bring in characters and people who are already famous, you already have some kind of idea of who you think they're going to be, or some kind of idea of like how you think they're going to act. And so bringing in a popular, famous person to play a well-known Star Wars character, I just don't think it would work. Yeah,
and normally that's going to take you out of the narrative, right?
Yeah,
exactly. It takes you out of that world when you see that character that you already know from something.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I stand with it. Sure, Star Wars has some examples of using famous people. Of course, Samuel L. Jackson being one of the biggest probably examples.
Yeah.
But he was not like a main character,
Exactly.
We don't get a whole lot of Mace Windu throughout the series. But most of the time for their main characters, they use somebody that is unknown. And
exactly.
I think one of the reasons for that is to keep, but with Mara Jade, you add a whole nother layer on that, because Mara Jade is already a beloved character.
It's a very specific attitude, demeanor.
Already a beloved character that has been established through novels. And so if you add her into live action, you already have to consider those things, because otherwise the fans will be upset.
Oh yeah.
And so I think if you get a Mara Jade, if Mara Jade ever comes, she's got to be an unknown. It has to be an actress that no one really knows to truly get people on board with it. Because if you use someone like what's her face? I just forgot her name, but
Brie Larson.
Yeah, Brie Larson.
Yeah.
There's just too many connections there already established in people's heads. So
I agree. Yeah. Overall, I mean, I would just say, Brie Larson has a very specific demeanor of when she acts. She has a very specific character archetype that she plays, which I'm not a huge fan of, but that's neither here nor there. I just saying, like, I personally don't think, regardless of my opinions on her acting, I think that her archetype that she typically plays, and she's very popular, popularly known as, it just doesn't really fit Mara Jade, at least in the way we know her. So yeah, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, and it brings in a whole nother question of is Mara Jade going to come back to canon? And if you look at where we're headed, or at least where I think we're headed, and I've talked about before where I think they're taking these Disney Plus series, there is room for Mara Jade to return.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
But I think if she does return, it's not going to, of course, play out the way that we have known it to play out in Legends. And so I think people have to be prepared for that.
Well, and then again, that gives rise to another question that we've already asked in the past. If it's not going to be the same as already instituted Legend stories, do we even want it? That's another discussion.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of danger involved with bringing Mara Jade back, and I think
Yeah.
The question is, does Disney want to touch that, or do they want to just stay away and move on past it? And as we have been seeing, they're starting to want to kind of relive their glory days.
Yeah.
And I could see them trying to bring her back.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a possibility. I'm not going to say that it will happen, but because a lot of this legend stuff is starting to come back a little bit, I could see it, because that was a very beloved character. And a lot of people really like Mara Jade, so it's not an impossibility for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we know she'd probably be killed off by the time of,
Right.
of the sequels,
Right.
which she dies in Legends too. So
Sure.
yeah, and so I mean that would actually work out, but also there is the possibility that they bring her back and her and Luke never.
Yeah, she's like
never
she's
really
like the same but
have-
separate character.
Yeah, like they never necessarily get into some big deep relationship, and that's always a possibility, right? And so and then when they go back into the World Between Worlds, and they they bring back Rey, and Rey goes through the World Between Worlds and gets Ben back.
Yeah,
and then they go back in time, and and then maybe then you could have. I'm just being
like-
stupid.
Just stop.
I'm just being
please.
stupid.
Just stop. I'm like, it's physically hurting me hearing what you're saying. And then they get evil clone Yoda.
Yeah,
and,
evil clone Yoda shows up.
It's
Fights
a whole
Rey,
mess. I mean,
and then
it's a whole thing.
then all of a sudden, guess what? It's the Emperor's all behind it. He's still alive.
surprise for the third time in a row. Also, he's like, I am Sheev Skywalker.
Do it. Sheev Skywalker. That's the end of the.
Yeah.
He turns to the light side. Oh, that'd be beautiful.
That'd be
That'd be
awesome.
such a beautiful ending.
I think
the
so too.
Skywalker saga.
And then like Sheev Skywalker has to fight evil clone Yoda. That would be full circle right there, I think. So
It'd be like, you thought you knew the story, but it was Emperor Palpatine's
Surprise.
all along. The Skywalker saga is about Palpatine.
It truly
Palpatine
is. It truly is. It truly is. Gosh, let's move on, please. Please, let's rip the Band-Aid off and let's move on.
All right, well, let's jump into our releases real quick. For our releases, we have 2 comic issues coming out this week on Wednesday. And this is the next issue of Darth Vader, which is actually going to be one of the preludes for War of the Bounty Hunters. So I'm really excited to see how Vader's story will play into War of the Bounty Hunters. I'm excited to see that. Also, the next issue of Dr. Aphra, which is also going to be a prelude to War of the Bounty Hunters. So both of those will be out on Wednesday. And what we're seeing so far in these preludes is they're showing, well, they're preludes, of course, to the main comic that will be called War of the Bounty Hunters. There'll be 5 issues of that.
Yeah.
And then all these comics, sorry, I got like a tickle in my throat. All these comics.
Excuse me.
Andy. I can do it. Andy. What are you doing?
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Oh my goodness. So what was I saying? Oh yeah.
I don't know.
So all of these comics right now, these preludes they're calling them, are leading into the main one, which is going to be called War of the Bounty Hunter. And so there's like issue 1 of War of the Bounty Hunter. And then there's going to be like an issue of Darth Vader, an issue of Star Wars, an issue of Dr. Aphra. And then War of the Bounty Hunters issue 2. And then they're going to keep doing it like that.
Yeah.
And so this is going to span on for a while now. Like it's going to
Yeah,
be
it
months,
sounds like it.
months long. And I'm very curious to see how they all intertwine and how this story plays out. I feel like it's going to have some pretty important stuff happen in it. So I'm really excited
Yeah, it's
about
gonna be
it.
really cool.
So
Yeah.
I encourage you guys to follow along with this. We'll be talking about it as it plays out. And you'll be able to, again, in the comics in the back, there's a checklist. So you can make sure you're reading them in the right order, and you can even check them off, make sure that you're following that. So
Awesome.
And then on Friday, of course, we have the next episode of The Bad Batch. And so, of course, we are, going to be episode 5, I
Yes.
think. And as most of you probably know, there's 16 episodes, so like we still got a ways to go.
Yeah.
And so that's
still got
good
more
news.
to go.
Good news.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're going to get quickly into our Q&A, where we ask each and every one of you to ask us questions each week on Facebook, Instagram, all those good places. We have quite a few in, so we're going to basically go through the first 3 here. But our first question comes from Alex Mason, who says, "Who would you?" And this is very appropriate. Who would you like to see casted as Mara Jade if it ever went live action? And I think we kind of already. So I thought about this a little bit, and just because of sheer looks, I really don't know necessarily. And I'm very bad at like doing this, like picking a famous person to play. I'm not very good at doing that. Just out of sheer looks, I would say probably Rose Leslie. I think she played in Game of Thrones. I'm not really sure what else she played in, but I think in terms of looks, she is very similar looking to her and stuff like that. But my official answer would probably be I don't know, right? I would prefer that whoever played Mara Jade that went to live action, as we kind of already stated, it would be someone who we don't know. But that's just my 2 cents because, I don't want to have any kind of presumption as to how she's going to act or what she's going to do or all that good stuff. So, Drew, what about you? If you had to choose anybody to play Mara Jade as live action, who would it be?
Yeah, it's a hard one. The girl from I can't remember her name right now, but she was in Doctor Who.
Yeah,
the redhead from Doctor Who.
I think I'm thinking of the same person as you.
She's real tall.
I think so.
I don't remember what her name is. It's gonna really bother me that I can't remember that. Yeah, look it up. I could see her playing it. That's kind of the first person that comes to my
Karen
head.
Sheila Gillan.
Karen Gillan, yeah, there we go. I could see that. I could see, but honestly, I feel like I want it to be someone a little more on the like mature end, like as far as like appearance goes.
Oh, so Dana Noble.
So maybe a little too mature there.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, if you were to get like a Emily Blunt maybe with like red hair, someone like that, I could really vibe with. Vibe. Yeah. I just pulled out vibe.
You bringing in one of those, huh?
Yeah.
One of those crazy words.
One of those crazy words. Vibe.
He's vibing with it.
I could see someone like that do it. I don't know. But again, kind of like you just said and what I said earlier, I think it needs to be an unknown actress, not some big name.
Yeah, for sure.
I think in the end that should be the decision they make. But just to have some fun and throw out names, those are probably 2 that I could think of.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's move on here to our second question of the week. It comes from Corey Allen Wise, who says,
"What's up, Corey?"
Yes, hello, Corey. Talk about the Kenobi series and what you would like to see in the upcoming series. So we've touched on this a few different times, but yeah, I don't know that we've really sat down and was like, hey, this is what we want, this is what we think about. And to be honest, Corey, I don't know that I have super tight set expectations, because I think if I do, because I know myself, if I come in with very tight set expectations, I'm going to be disappointed. No matter how good it is, I'll be disappointed, right? Because I have very high expectations for the show in general. So I think for me personally, I would say I don't necessarily have too many like check boxes of, okay, it has to do this, they have to go here, I have to see this. But I just want to, I would just say, as long as they do justice to the character of Kenobi, right? And it stays true to how we see him all throughout the series, or the saga, should I say, then I'm going to be happy. We're going to see him on Tatooine, which is going to be really cool. In that time where he's protecting Luke and doing all stuff like that. I want to see Kenobi, and him still be Kenobi. I don't want to see any weird character changes. I don't want to see him, the whole point of Kenobi is how he's like, it doesn't matter what happens till the end of his life, he's going to serve others rather than himself, and he's going to stick to his values. And I don't want to see any, and I don't want to see any time of that being any different. I can easily like, oh, it's cool character development though if he struggles with his, no, that's not Kenobi. I'm sorry. It's just for me, I don't necessarily want to see that. There's so many other things and avenues that we could go rather than his internal struggle with what he believes. I just don't need to see that personally. But it could be interesting, I guess, because he's falling away and there's no more Jedi Order and stuff like that. But anyway, I can come back to I have other things to say, but Drew, what do you think? Was there any set expectations or thoughts you want through this series?
I think for me, when I think about this show, I first and foremost think about this being a character piece, right? Like,
yeah.
I want the focus of this show to be on Kenobi. I don't want Kenobi to be some kind of side character that appears every once in a while, but they call it Kenobi.
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
Like, I want this to be focused on him. I want us to see the inner struggle he has about the things that have happened.
Yeah,
you have to understand,
absolutely.
Kenobi is really one of the saddest stories of all of Star Wars.
It really is.
You see this character who will die for what he believes in, is willing to sacrifice everything for the greater good.
Yeah.
And he still suffers for it.
Yeah.
He never gets really anything good from it. Right? Like he gives everything he has, and in the end he still really doesn't have anything.
Right. Yeah.
And
nothing to show for his efforts.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of he's really kind of has a tragic story.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yet he's still someone that we look at as a hero and someone that we're inspired by, because no matter how bad things got, he's still stuck to that, and that's something to look up to. And so I want this show to be a continuation of that, and a continuation of, he's lost his brother or son, however you want to look at it. He's lost his, he's went through a war that has probably really messed with him.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance we could see him dealing with maybe some like PTSD type things, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Like kind of dealing with this. I mean, he just went through this crazy war, like nonstop.
Every day something's going on.
His brother turned to the dark side, and he had to literally like chop him up.
Yeah.
To stop him.
Yeah.
All of everyone he's been around his entire life is dead.
Mm-hmm.
The army he trusted in and now want to kill him.
Yeah.
He has nothing.
Yeah.
He's on a desert planet with nothing, and all of a sudden, all of that craziness and loudness and busyness turns into silence.
Yeah.
And he's all alone. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so those are the kind of things I want this show to be about.
Yeah.
And to see the growth of coming out from that, because I do think there is going to be this struggle. Now, not like a turn to the dark side struggle, but just like a struggle to
was everything that I did, was it right?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. He's going to be having a lot of doubt, right?
Yeah.
And I want to see that. I want to see a relationship between him and Qui-Gon. I think that's one thing cool. that would really be awesome in the show, is to see that relationship some more.
Yeah.
Because of Qui-Gon being a Force ghost, for those of you who are maybe confused.
Yeah.
I would love to see, and of course, to see Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, Obi-Wan and Anakin, whatever you want to call them, having some kind of interaction in this show, and what that means for Kenobi and how he deals with that,
Yeah.
And it's those kind of things I want to see from this show.
Yeah.
That's my big thing.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you and I are on the same wavelength here, right? There's not really a bunch of check boxes of like, okay, I want to see Obi-Wan do this or go here or da da da. We want to see this show be all about Kenobi, nothing but Kenobi.
Yeah.
I mean, other than some side things that build up to his character, his story development. And then furthermore, just stay true to the character who we know and love as Kenobi.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Anyway, so I think that kind of, we could go on forever. Again,
we could talk about
we get
it
so many things to talk about.
time.
But yeah, I think it's just as long as it sticks to the character and to the theme of who he is, I think we're going to be good.
For sure.
All right, so our third and final question comes from Christian Perry, who says, what do you think about Jedis being able to control others' emotions? I have a theory that Anakin actually slowly changed Padme's emotions for her to love him. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting theory for sure. So, and it's hard to say. It's hard to say because we know for a fact that Jedi have the ability to utilize mind trick or force mind trick, right? So I think the biggest part is looking to the definition of what mind trick is. And I don't know that we have a strict canon definition. It's like, okay, it is this, and this. It is not that, and that, right? In my mind, a lot of times, how do I say this? In my mind, a lot of times, if you're using force mind trick, it's kind of like an instance where you say, okay, you're doing this or you're doing that. It's either yes or no, black and white. And it's like kind of like just this very simplistic, okay, you do not need to see my credentials, right? Oh, you're going to let me through here. So I think affecting the emotions would be just a much, much, much deeper, harder, more intricate thing with mind trick. Now, I'm not saying that it's not done, right? Or that it couldn't be done, especially with someone like Anakin, who is incredibly powerful in the Force. So it is, yeah. I mean, I'd say that is definitely a possibility. I'm saying if anyone could do it, it would be Anakin. I would say. So yeah, I don't know. That's a good question, Kristen. I'd never really thought about that. Now, I will give you my last 2 cents, and I'll pass it over to Drew. Here's the thing. Now, I'm not saying that that's not what happened, but I will say this. There's a very famous saying that says, love is blind, right? I mean, all throughout in our real world, we see where people have done heinous things and then their mothers still love them and they don't care. And they're like, there's no way. They're just in such denial that their children could do that. Or husband and wife, the wife or the husband does something horrible and the wife just can't conceive of it. We see that in real life. So I don't think it's too much of a stretch to think that Padme never really truly saw that side of Anakin, and then whenever she heard about it, that she wouldn't believe it because she was so in love with him that she didn't want to believe it. And another thing to think is their whole relationship was in their society, in their culture, was illegal, right? It was bad, so to speak. So their love was already based in something bad. So she already had to have this kind of callous built up to what is morally right and wrong. And so I would just say, could it be that Anakin, manipulated her emotions through the Force? Possibly. I don't know. But I think a more logical answer, just from my own mind and my own headcanon, is just that what they were doing was already morally unacceptable. So over time, as she saw Anakin do kind of worse and worse and worse stuff, she just kind of, hey, love is blind. I'm kind of closing my left eye and opening my right eye. And I'm just kind of going as is and kind of living in denial. That's just the way I look at it. Drew, what do you think?
Honestly, I think you really covered it there. Yeah. I don't think I need to say anything else.
Anyway, I nice and thorough, I started going on.
It was very thorough.
Yeah, I was like, I kind of got in a roll there. So anyway,
I think for me to say anything else would just be to kind of repeating. So
okay, so yeah, so I hope that answers your question. Like, again, I don't want to reiterate. I want to reiterate that it's not that it's impossible. It's not saying that didn't happen. I'm just saying within my own headcanon, I think that's how it was more realistic. That's just like she overlooked some things because she loved them so much. That's just the way I look at it. So, all right. So that ends our Q&A for this week. Again, thank everybody so much for all the continued support, all the questions that you give us. We love it. We have some in our queue for next week already. We want
some more of it.
Yes, and we want as many questions as you can give because we love talking about it. And it kind of gets us outside of our own pre-organized thoughts, right? Yeah, we have to sit here and discuss stuff straight out of our hearts, so to speak.
And sometimes it brings up the best conversations. It comes out of it sometimes.
Yeah, we start talking about things about Star Wars that we would have never normally thought about. So yeah, we love the questions and we're very appreciative. So we're going to move on from our Q&A and we're going to get into our main topic for the week. And again, of course, that is reviewing episode 4 of Bad Batch, which is called Cornered. So we're going to do just a very quick we're going to do a very quick non-spoiler and then get into spoilers. So, Drew, do you want to lead us off into your non-spoiler thoughts?
Yeah, so non-spoilers, we are very much still in what I would consider to be a episode of the week
Yeah,
type
absolutely.
feel. Or, well, I'm sorry, maybe that's not the right term. I guess you could say monster of the week, but it's not a monster.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
I
saying.
know what you're saying, though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very much just like it. I don't feel like it's necessarily carrying a plot forward as much as I would like.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a lot of adventuring for the sake of adventuring. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm just not sold on this series yet.
Yeah, I agree.
And I hear a lot of positivity about the show from most people that I've talked to, from most like internet, people that I see. Like most people are positive on the series, and I'm not necessarily negative on this series. I think it's been fine.
Yeah.
I don't think it's been bad. But
Yeah.
nothing has like really
What kind of hooked you in there?
the first episode I was into.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the first episode, the one that was extra long. That had some good stuff in it. I really enjoyed that. And there's been bits and pieces throughout episodes since then that are things that I like. And I like that we're seeing the transition of the going from the Republic to the Empire and what does that look like, and seeing those things.
Right.
I like that, but the overall episodes are just a little bland for me.
Well,
And so this one was like one of our shortest yet, maybe the shortest.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like 25 minutes
Yeah.
long. And, it was very straightforward. You had your like introduction, you had your big action scene, and then you had your closing. It was very like what's the word, where it like follows a very set pattern that you would expect. There's a certain word I'm trying to think of, but
I know what you're
can't think of
talking
what it
about.
is,
Yeah.
but there's just nothing really that surprised me. We do get a certain character return in this that
Yeah.
I'm sure to most would be considered the biggest aspect of this episode. But honestly, like, it didn't do much for me.
Yeah.
So that's my.
I am gonna. Basically, I had the same thoughts. I want to continue that train of thought that you just said onto our spoiler review. So if you haven't watched it yet, you might want to just tune out now. I will just say, though, non-spoiler, right before the spoiler, you don't really need to tune out, because even if you haven't watched, because there's really nothing, honestly, in my opinion, worth even spoiling, right? So if you look to the premise of this episode, right, literally they came to land on this planet literally for no other reason than just to refuel and recalibrate, as they say, right? That is literally the whole reason they're there. I mean, there's no other thing driving the story. And as they were doing that, all of a sudden we get Fennec Shand coming to get Omega, okay? And again, okay, normally that might not be a bad thing, but I guess my point is that this whole episode was literally just to introduce Fennec Shand, which is a character, A, that we already know about from Mandalorian, and B, we already knew that she was coming into the show, right? We already know through the trailers.
Yeah, there's no surprises.
There's no
here,
surprise, right? So my point is if they never shown her in the trailers, I think then that could have been a pretty cool excuse to get the episode, that we got. If we never knew that Fennec Shand was coming, I think that I would have maybe a different opinion of this episode. But the fact that it's a character that we already know who she is, and we already knew that she was going to come to the show anyway, you're wasting a whole episode just to introduce her. And it's like, we already know who she is. We already knew she was coming. So, like, why waste a whole episode just for her? And there wasn't even anything for a backstory. It literally was just a couple scenes of her running and shooting. I mean, that's it. We already know she can do that.
Right. Yeah, and that's a really good point. Is like, we didn't get some big character growth for her in this. Like,
Right.
she was there to be used as an action character, like a big action scene.
Right.
And they were, trying to run from her. And that was pretty much what she was utilized for.
Just a plot
And so,
device to show that Hunter can fight. I mean, that's literally it.
Yeah. So, let's talk about what we can, though, as far as the narrative goes. We know that she is being, someone is paying her to take Omega, right?
Yeah.
And so that means someone bigger is involved in this. Do we have a guess for who that is? Do you have any kind of...
I do. I think it's the Kaminoans. Basically, they needed to get her to continue their... what word I'm looking for? Not mutated, but their enhanced clones, right? From my understanding, because at the end of the previous episode, we see the Kaminoans going out and basically like, hey, if we're going to stay afloat and we're going to survive, we need to continue these enhancements.
Yeah, and actually, let's talk about that for a second, because this was one of the more interesting aspects of the show for me, is that the Kaminoans, they're like, they have, they're saying, hey, the Django's blood is running out. Like our DNA we have of him is we're almost out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we're going to have to use someone else if we're going to continue this, which is awesome. I love that idea. I think that's great. It's not something I've ever really thought about, like that they eventually would run out, right?
Yeah,
but like,
exactly.
It's cool. It's cool. And now they have this decision to make. The Empire is saying, well, these guys cost a lot of money. This is costing us money. We can ditch this, and as we see them, they take the what kind of looks like the first Death Troopers as their like testing grounds for using just regular old humans as their new army.
Right.
And so we're seeing this where they're kind of weighing out their options here. Something's going to go down here, right? Between the Kaminoans, or I'm not sure how you're saying it. Is it Kaminoans? Is it Kaminoans? I don't know, honestly.
Yeah.
The Kaminoans,
whatever. Kaminoans.
They, between them and the Empire, like something's going to go down, right?
Sure.
And a good way to, in my opinion, to know that for sure is like, we know that in The Mandalorian, there is a guy there wearing the Kaminoan outfit, right, for the cloning facility, but it's a man, it's a human.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so I think there's going to be a point where most likely the Empire's going to end up taking them all out, right?
Right, and then Kamino remains a cloning facility, or like maybe a shell of what it was, but it's being taken over by...
It's completely taken over by the Empire.
The Kaminoan people are no longer there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's going to eventually come to a head between them, and there's going to be a conflict there.
100%.
And so when you look at, is that what Omega's purpose is? Are they worried about not providing them with someone good enough, and then like the Empire does and decide they want to kill them, so they're like trying to hurry, and they're like, oh, well, let's use Omega? Right. Or is it someone else completely? But whoever it is has to understand there's some kind of special significance to Omega,
right?
Which is interesting in itself. So
yeah, exactly.
That's one of the more interesting narrative threads we have going in this show right now, in my opinion, is kind of what. Well, first of all, the character of Omega is very frustrating to me.
Yeah.
So far, like in the past 2 episodes now, she's just like ran off, and.
I was gonna say I one of the, it wasn't really a question, but Alex Mason included in our questions this week. He said, all he said was, can they not just put like a tracker on Omega?
Yes.
And
yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I forgot. I was gonna save that for this, and I forgot to write it down. So my bad, Alex. I was gonna say that.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, and we talked about this a little bit last week too. But it's like, why are you guys taking her along with you? Like, she's like part of the crew. Like, yeah, she's going with you, but she's a little girl.
Yeah.
It's like, leave her, put her in the ship, tell her to like hide in a in a compartment and just wait till we get back.
Well, as much
and
as
the thing is, like Wrecker and one of the others, they were still there at the ship, right?
Yeah,
But for some reason, they still took the girl with them out into the strange planet in public, and it's like, what?
Well, I know, as much as I hate to say it, it just goes to show that this is still a kid's show, because children's shows like to take children characters and put them in the middle of action to make children feel like they're strong and special and they can do whatever they want.
And we talked about that last week about like that's the kind of the idea of this, right? And and this is following the same pattern that Rebels did, that Resistance did, that Clone Wars did. They take a kid character that becomes very, very important and can do things far past what a kid really can do, essentially, right?
100%, yeah.
And they're following that same pattern here. Nothing there has really changed. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, man, they're just being really critical of this show. We are being critical, but it's because we love all of this.
Yeah.
We love the fact that we have more to watch. We love the Bad Batch, but like in a sense, we do what we do so that we can be like somewhat critical.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way. Everybody knows that we love Star Wars. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing a Star Wars podcast.
Exactly.
So just know that we love the show because of Star Wars. It has a lot of Star Wars themes. It has a lot of Star Wars locations. And we love that. So we could dote on the good things of its Star Wars, of like, oh, it does really well of portraying Star Wars environments and stuff. We already know that, right? It's being produced by Dave Filoni and all stuff like that, right? We know that that's good. It's just the storytelling elements that we wish could be better.
Yeah, and I've said before, there is so much potential here for future characters to appear that could be really exciting.
Yeah,
getting Rex and Ahsoka back in this could be very interesting. Seeing Commander Cody in this could be very interesting.
Yeah,
Darth Vader in this could be very interesting. There is a lot of potential left in this show to see some really interesting things. That's not even mentioning that we could see Maul again.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we're in that timeline.
Yeah, there's nothing stopping us from seeing Maul. There's nothing stopping us from even getting Kenobi again. Who's to say we
theoretically?
Couldn't? Theoretically, we could see a Kenobi appearance.
Ahsoka and Rex. I mean,
we could see Yoda. There's not necessarily anything stopping us from.
I mean, they're all in that timeline right there. That's easily
And so there's a lot of opportunity here to see some really cool things, and I think we are headed to some really cool things. It's just like we are going to get some of this slower, going through the motions type episodes. Like in this episode, they needed to find fuel. Like that was the big thing. They had to stop where they were because they needed fuel. Like that was that's the plot.
That's the whole plot.
And that's fine and dandy, but it just goes to show like this is going to have those very much like, let's fill in some gaps here.
Yeah.
Until we get to the next big moment.
And when we have 2 and 3 episodes right off right in a row, not even 5 episodes into the series, that's just what kind of bothers me a little bit. That when we had for episode 1 that had story narrative, and then the next 3 or 4 is already like
and it's like you look at the Clone Wars. What the Clone Wars could do that this show can't really do is the Clone Wars would jump between a bunch of people.
Exactly right.
The Clone Wars was never about one little group. I mean, sure, the focus a lot of times was Ahsoka and Obi-Wan and Anakin. Like they were arguably like the main characters, but like, but they didn't always have to be. They could go off and do an episode about just Yoda or just about Mace Windu. They
C-3PO and R2-D2.
Yeah,
all these different ones.
Your favorite episodes.
Yeah. When they go to the market to buy some berries, whatever, right?
But anyways, this is just the beginning of this show.
Right.
And I'm holding my final thoughts, of course, until this whole thing's said and done. And then we'll have a big, long talk about like, our overall thoughts on like where this season lies in the mix of everything else.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But for now, my expectations have not been set very high, but that also means that like, they don't have to do a whole lot to get me pretty excited at this point as well. So
excited, yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing where we go from here. Still have a lot of episodes.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, the bar has been set somewhat low. So I think that you're right. Exactly the same thing for me, too. We could have some really interesting stuff come next week and blow my mind away, that if it was put into Clone Wars Season 7 or Mandalorian Season 2, I'd be like, oh, whatever, who cares? But now that's because in this, you're like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. So... yeah, a lot of really good stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, again, it's still Star Wars. We still love it. We be critical because we do love it, and that's the whole point. Is that hey, we love it so much. What are some of the fine-tuned points that we can pick out that could be better? So, but overall, it is Star Wars, and we do love it. But we're excited to see how it progresses. Join us next week. We're going to go over the next episode, which will be episode 5, and so we're excited to do that. So. Without further ado, we're going to conclude our episode today. We want to thank everybody so much for the continued support towards our podcast. We absolutely look forward to hearing from you. We'd love to see a comment from you. Send us a message via Instagram or Facebook, however you would like to do it. We'd love to hear from you. But please like and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We have a lot of different stuff. We have weekly news, polls, memes, discussions, and more. But also, please follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you could, please leave us a review. We'd love to see that. It does help us. If you would like to support us financially in any way, we do have our donation page for the Jedi Eternal 2.0 GoFundMe. And we also do have a merch store. But overall, though, we thank you just simply for listening and being a part of our community. But join us next week for episode 58. And last but not least, may the Force be with you. And we thank you for joining the Jedi